So excited for this song. Just thought I'd say that. Matthew chapter 14, we find the apostles out in a boat in a storm, tossed around by winds, by the waves, being battered about. And lo and behold, here comes Jesus, walking on the water, walking toward him. The boat is full of fear. And Peter does something remarkable. Now, it would have been tempting for Peter to just stay where he was, to just sit, to just wait for Jesus' goodness, could just hope that Jesus' presence was enough. It'd be tempting for Peter to think, I could just stay right where I am. But not Peter. Peter doesn't ask for calmer seas. I mean, he doesn't even ask Jesus to come into the boat. In chapter 14, verse 28 and 29, Peter says, Lord, if it is you, command me to come out there to you. In verse 29, Jesus just says, come. That one word is a call upward. It's a call higher. It's a call out of safety, out of fear, out of the boat, out of the place that Peter was extremely comfortable. He's a fisherman. Peter steps down from the boat into the water and he walks toward Jesus. Even when he slips, Jesus reaches out his hand and lifts him up. Okay, let's rewind a little bit. Completely different situation hundreds of years before. In Judges chapter 6, we first meet Gideon. Gideon is threshing wheat in a wine press. That's weird for our culture. We don't get that. That is not where you thresh wheat. In a wine press. A wine press has walls up around it. He is in this thing because he is hiding. He's in a confined place. He's avoiding the Midianites. At the time, Israel is being oppressed, being overrun by the Midianites. And he's fearful. The nation is impoverished. They're in a bad place. Gideon's posture, just his physical place, tells the whole story. It's a story of survival for them right now, not of victory. This is not a positive situation. Let's pick up there in Judges chapter 6, verse 12, where the angel of the Lord comes to Gideon, and here's what happens. Angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, the Lord is with you, valiant warrior. I don't know what your translation says. That's Christian Standard says, valiant warrior, you hiding there in the wine press. Gideon certainly doesn't see it that way. Gideon doesn't see himself as the valiant warrior. He complains that God, in verse 13, complains that God has abandoned Israel to the Midianites. Verse 14 says, the Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength you have and deliver Israel from the grasp of Midian. I am sending you. Then he responds again with protest. He says, listen, my clan is the weakest clan in Manasseh. I'm the weakest one in my family. He's just going, I am down here and down here. I'm the worst. I mean, why in the world would you send me anywhere? You know, it would have been easier. Might have even been better for Gideon to just hold on to who he is. To not ever think about God changing him from the inside. There in the wine press, he could be safe. He could be safe right there in God's arms. Certainly never leave home, never let the walls of the wine press down. Look at God's answer in verse 16. But I will be with you, the Lord said to him. You will strike Midian down as if it were one man. See, God's not describing who Gideon is. He is declaring who Gideon will become through him. This song, like I said, I've been so excited for this song. This song, Called Me Higher, celebrates God lifting us up beyond where we are right now. Beyond our fear, beyond our maybe complacency. Maybe it's a half-hearted faith. This song very much describes exactly what the Christian calling is all about. That we're called upward. We're called from faith to fear. We're called from hiding to obedience. We're called from self-doubt to trust in God's power. as Christians today, the world can be fearful. The world can be stressful. I know sometimes I wish that we could just have a nonstop church camp-like experience. You know, that maybe it'd be great if like we could all go up like for our retreat to Trinity Pines, or everybody pile up to Camp Ivydale or somewhere, someplace like that, and everybody just be around together and hang out together and sing together and encourage each other together. I think that'd be great. But it's not real. That's not what God has called us to do. We're not called to be safe. We're not called to be comfortable. We're not called to be insulated from the bad stuff in the world. We're not called to have some sort of monastic spirituality. We are called higher. So I want us to look real quick just at Peter and Gideon and take some lessons from them, and then make those lessons, compare those lessons to what we see in this great song. So let's look at Peter real fast. Peter's a fisherman. Peter's super comfortable in a boat, spends a lot of time in a boat. He's seen a storm or two. Peter has got to know that the safe place, if you're out on a boat, if you got to be out on a boat and a storm hits, the safe place to be is in the boat. You don't get out. Get in the water is a bad idea. You're in a bad spot when you get in the water. But Peter's experience teaches us a handful of lessons. Number one, this call comes from Jesus himself. Peter doesn't act on impulse. Peter doesn't act on bravado. Not alone. Peter's courageous. But notice, he asks for permission. He asks for this calling. He says, listen, if it's really you, tell me to come out, I'll do it. But call me. Give me this call. And when he does, Jesus' call gives Peter the authority, gives Peter direction. See, we don't rise higher because of our own courage. We don't rise higher because of our own sinlessness or our own goodness, our own talents, our own abilities. We rise higher because Jesus calls us to rise higher. He points the way, and Jesus says, come to me, come to me my way. Let's do things my way, and I will lift you higher. Number two, the call requires Peter leaving the boat. Well, that's obvious, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the story. It wouldn't be a great story if he didn't get out of the boat. But the boat to Peter, the boat to us represents safety. It represents routine. It represents the place where Peter, it's familiarity. We all have those places. Everybody else stayed in the boat, right? Every other apostle stays inside the boat. Only Peter gets to have this experience. You ever think about that? Years down the road, they're talking, and Peter goes, yeah, remember that time I walked with Jesus out in the water? Pretty cool. And I bet none of them go, yeah, you fell. And he's like, I walked on the water. Did you walk? No, that's right. It was just me. He's the only one that did it. He got out of the boat. Being called higher requires giving something up. Peter gave up what was familiar, gave up what was safe. The song says, I could just stay right where I am and hope to feel you, hope to feel something again. That's hope like wishful thinking. That's not hope like we have in our salvation. This is saying maybe I could just hope that would happen if I just stayed right here. To live to a higher calling means we give something up. We move on from this to this. We also see that living called higher is sustained by our focus. You've heard this many times, I'm sure. Peter walks on the water while he's looking at Jesus. When he takes his eyes off Jesus, we know what happens. He starts to sink. But here's the thing. Faith doesn't fail because storms exist. Because storms exist. Our faith falters when we look away from Jesus. Our faith falters when we forget that He's the one calling us. This isn't just us doing this. He's the one calling us into this relationship. And we see finally that living called higher is met with the grace of Jesus. Even when Peter stumbles, even when Peter falls, Jesus doesn't immediately just give up. Jesus doesn't ridicule him. Jesus doesn't just, embarrass him. He lifts him up, and then, yes, He corrects him. But that's the point. Being called higher doesn't mean perfection. It means that we live in utter dependence upon Jesus. And that we understand that and we're willing to accept His instructions and His correction. See, when we sing this song, we're not claiming some sort of higher spirituality. We're not claiming to say, I've been called higher because I'm so good. That's not what it's about. We're not claiming some spiritual achievement. We're not claiming some righteous selection. What we're doing is confessing. We're confessing that we understand that Jesus calls us, that He persistently invites us to a place that's higher than fear, a place that's higher than comfort, a place that's higher than shallow faith. That Jesus calls us into trust, into obedience, and into surrender. That's what living called higher is all about. Just like Peter, Jesus calls us out of our boat. Whatever your boat might be, whatever that comfort zone is, maybe it's complacency, maybe it's just, I'm good enough right here and I don't need to push it anymore. But Jesus calls us out. He calls us out of that state of being okay with where we are. He calls us out of our boat into some uncertainty. He calls us out higher toward Him. He calls us not to watch safely from a distance, but to walk right there with Him, even if it's in the waves. He calls us higher. Now Gideon, look at Gideon, how he's called higher. It's not hard to see here in Judges chapter 6, but Gideon didn't want anything to do with his call. I mean, he's like Moses all over again. I'm not the right guy. I'm not the bad family. You don't want me. I'm not the guy for this. And things are difficult with Gideon. Things are difficult with Israel right now. But we learn a little bit about this calling from Gideon too. First thing we see is God calls Gideon higher than his circumstances. Gideon is literally hiding when God calls him. He's fearful. He's uncertain. He's living really in a state of defeatism. I mean, he's like these Midianites, man. God's given us up to them. We're done. Midian has taken over. But God calls him to deliver Israel, casting a vision that Gideon can't see. We kind of talked about that this morning, right? Seeing the unseen. God says, I know what's going to happen. You just got to get out of your hiding place and come do this. God's call isn't for us, even today, isn't take your time. It's just whenever you're ready. I mean, yes, God doesn't push us, but here's how God calls us. He invites us, He compels us to rise above where we are right now. God never says, get to a certain point and just be happy. We're supposed to always be growing. I mean, that's 1 Peter talks about that. Add to your faith this, add to this. Keep growing. That we need to be people who are always trying to dig deeper into our relationship with God. Number 2, God calls Gideon higher than he even sees himself. Gideon has a self-esteem issue. And maybe it's real, maybe it's just, please don't call me. I mean, maybe it's just, don't pick somebody else. I'm not the right person. But Gideon sees weakness and God sees potential in his hands. God says, go in the strength you have. That's so great. He says, go in the strength you have. Am I not sending you? Gideon's assessing his own strength. He forgot about God's, right? He forgot to even consider the fact who is calling him. And see, Gideon's strength is not in his own, it's not his own confidence. Even once he accepts this, his strength is the fact that he's obedient, that he's willing to surrender to what God has to say. We'll look at that in a second. Being called higher means trusting God's assessment over our own. That we learn to see things the way God sees them, not how we see them. Third thing, God calls Gideon higher than human methods. As the story progresses, move into chapter 7, you might be familiar with as God calls Gideon to go into war with Midian. As he begins this, he has 32,000 men. He's like, here we go. 32,000 soldiers, we're going to go take on Midian. And God says, you know what? That's way too many. I'm not going to read this just for the sake of time, but if you look at chapter 7, verses 5 through 7, possibly a familiar, he says, go take these guys down the water and have them drink water. Some of them are going to stick their faces in like dogs. Others are going to scoop up water. He says, those 300 that are left that scoop the water, take those guys. Now, to Gideon, you got to just think, human thinking here. This isn't strategy. This is surrender. This is the craziest thing he's ever heard. It's surrender. But that's exactly what it is. It's surrender. It's surrender to God's calling. God strips away any possibility of Gideon thinking this was me doing this. God strips away all the human security that Gideon might have. So his faith is going to stand on God alone. And the victory that follows is unmistakably God's. I mean, it's trumpets, jars, and torches in God's hands that defeat a huge army. It's not military might, it's not weapons, it's not numbers. It's what God uses through Gideon. And we see finally again that God calls Gideon higher than fear. What's interesting in this, and this is one of those things you never read about you never learn about when you're doing the flannel graph story as a little kid, is we just go, he gets called out and goes. Well, no, he doesn't. In verses 9 through 15, there's another scene here. Gideon is still afraid. God tells him in verse 9, go take on Midian. And then he says, but if you're still scared, take your servant and go down to the camp and just listen. He has him go eavesdrop on some of the Midianites, and they're sharing a dream. One of the guys says, I had this dream, this giant loaf of bread rolls down the hill and squashes one of our team. I'm not making that up. Go look. That's what it really says. You talk about a weird dream. There it is. But dude has this dream, and the other guy says, you know what that is? That's God's servant Gideon taking out the Midianites. And Gideon stops and worships God. And he goes, okay, all right, I get it. We're going to do this. God doesn't shame him for his fear, though. He meets him there. And he says, okay, let me help you through this. Let me show you how we're going to get through this. And he lifts him higher. When we sing this song, when we sing Call Me Higher, we're reminded that God lifts us out of our hiding place. God moves us beyond any false sense of security that we might have in our own abilities. Gideon's calling shows us, teaches us to trust God's power, not our own power, which then will lead us into personal spiritual victories that will point back to God's power and remind us, hey, God got me through that. God's the one who did this for me. See, Gideon never became fearless, but he did become faithful. That's us. We're called higher. That doesn't mean we're not afraid. Doesn't mean things aren't difficult. It means we're faithful. We're called higher than our own weaknesses, our own doubts, our own plans, our own comforts. And when we step forward, even when we're scared to death, God will prove to us that His strength is made perfect even in what we lack. Song closes with these lines. You've called me higher, you've called me deeper, and I'll go where you lead me, Lord. I'll be yours for all my life. So let your mercy light the path before me, because you've called me higher and you've called me deeper, and I'll go where you lead me, Lord. God hasn't called us to be comfortable. God hasn't called us to be safe. God hasn't called us to be at ease. He's called us higher. He's called us deeper. He's called us to go where He leads, in spite of our fear, in spite of really sometimes wanting just to stay right where we are. But He doesn't call us on our own. Not on our own strength, not in our own courage, not in our own abilities. He promises that His mercy will light the path before us. He promises He'll lift us up when we slip. He won't ridicule us when we're afraid. He'll just be there with us. He's calling you. He's calling me. If you're not a Christian, He's calling you to Him. He's calling you right now through my words, through the people around you, through His word, that whatever source that brought you here tonight, He's calling you to Him. To make a move toward Him in obedient faith. He's calling you to repent, to get out of your boat, whatever that boat is. to come to Him, to confess Him as Lord, to answer His call by being immersed into Christ, and to live faithfully, walking with Him. Answer. If you're a Christian, maybe He's calling you. He's calling you to live higher. To live on a higher plane of commitment, a higher plane of dependence, a higher plane of dedication. He's calling you out of comfort. He's calling you out of complacency. He's calling you into a deeper relationship with Him. He's calling us all. Answer that call. Whatever your need is, if there's something we can do to help, answer His call as we stand and sing.